So I went to a military academy for high school. It
Okay.
was an Army JROTC program.
Oh, nice.
So this was 2005 to 2010. And at that time, for whatever reason, I was a libertarian. I was listening to Ron Paul. Why do we have military bases and however many countries we have them in? I was like this kind of non-interventionalist guy, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. And we would have guys from the Army come in
Hmm.
that had came back from deployment, and they would talk about what they were doing over there. And little, 16-year-old me didn't necessarily agree with it, all this sort of stuff. And what we should talk about today is what you said, those relationships. And actually, those countries do want us there.
Absolutely.
And the relationships we forge make them stronger, make us stronger, make the world safer. I've
That's
kind of
exactly
come
right.
to learn that how important that stuff is. So I think talking about that would be huge, because there is that kind of connotation with the American public. I think it's easing up a little bit, but 20 years of war, the American public is exhausted in a lot of ways with that. And you see the money we spend, and we have military bases and, all the way to Korea, Germany, thousands of service members overseas at any given time, all this sort of stuff. But there's a good reason for it.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. If you look at, where we are strategically placed, we are in areas of interest, right? And not just for, the United States interests, but for the interest of our allies and partners. Having an Air Force or, a Army or any service installation is, I guess you can look at it both ways, right? It's a positive and a negative, right? But, we're there to provide support and to be at that front line if things do hit the fan.
Right.
We have forces that are already in that area of responsibility or in that region.
There's no time to play catch up
That's
if
exactly
an
right.
event were to occur and the relationships aren't built. The infrastructure isn't there. I mean, can you imagine if we were a true isolationist country and we didn't have any presence anywhere around the world, and something were to occur that went against our interests, whether it was economically, politically, there was a horrible terrorist, like any scenario, and we didn't have a presence, we would not have the capability to respond to it.
And that's exactly right. So one of the soft truths is competent special operations forces cannot be created after emergencies occur. And that, I think, reigns true with this, right? You can't make up for the time, right? You can't make
Right.
up for that relationship building. It shouldn't happen when there is a crisis, right? We need to already be out there. And I think, SOCOM and the SOF community really does a great job at making sure that we have those pre-existing relationships and we also have the support from the other services.
That's a majority of the efforts of SOCOM, right? Is those relationships and working with these partner nations and the training and teaching our men and women these different languages and cultures and understanding the different peoples of the earth, right?
That's
Like
exactly
part of
right.
that, that's probably the whole piece, effectively.
And that's exactly right. So we not only internally train our own special operations forces, but being that we are the elite force that we do train other people so that they can take care of themselves
Right.
too. So and they can tackle their own obstacles and challenges.
Is that part of, are we live, David? This is a good place to start. I don't want to screw your rank up. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Senior Master Sergeant Mercedes Gonzales. I'm in the Air Force. I've been in the Air Force for 18 years. So
Senior Master Sergeant
that's
Gonzales,
correct.
welcome to the show.
Yeah,
Thanks for sitting here today.
thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. I was going to ask goals, right? Would one of the goals be, and maybe it is the goal, to have a lot of these nations be supported by us, but overarchingly, hey, now they kind of have the knowledge and the power and the resources to handle their own stuff, which actually makes it easier on the United States. That's less resources we have to spend, less lives that it might cost us in the future. If all these countries can really support themselves, it sounds like that would be a good thing for the world, and especially for us.
And that's exactly right. So I know SOCOM as a whole, we spend a lot of time investing in our allies and partners, and not just relationships, but teaching them the skill sets that they might need to defend themselves. And that way they can, if a crisis does occur, they have the same capabilities that we have.
And those capabilities probably vary, right? Some countries we have relationships with might just be starting out their kind of special operations divisions, right? And then some countries maybe historically are further along than we are and could teach us something.
And that's exactly right. It is it's a give and take relationship, right? Like when we learn from them just as much as they learn from us. And you look at, the way that we're regionally broken out across.
Pull this a little closer.
Yeah, the way we're regionally broke out across the different theaters. We have that regional familiarity, so we understand how to operate in this environment. In South America, we know how to operate. In the northern tier, we know how to operate, in the central command. So it's unique for sure. And I think when we go out there, we are, the world's elite,
Right.
when it comes to special operations.
Is there any area that is maybe not off limits, but like, North Pole operations? Are we learning how to operate in that environment too?
Absolutely. We're everywhere.
Everywhere.
Yeah, 80 countries at least.
So there's nowhere on the planet where we couldn't respond to if something went down.
That's exactly right.
That's comforting to know. That feels good as an American citizen sitting here comfy at home. Let's talk about kind of how you ended up where you are, right? So you work at MacDill Air Force Base. I wanted to do this episode. We've never done something like this before just because it's so prevalent. I think everyone in the city has obviously heard of MacDill. You guys have been here for a long, long time. CENTCOM, Central Command, is headquartered at MacDill. SOCOM, what am I missing? I mean, you mentioned the Marines. Maybe that's within SOCOM.
So we have a Marine division on the installation, and we have obviously the air refueling wing itself. We have a Navy Reserve unit. We have an Air Force Reserve unit, and then, if I recall correctly, there's 30 other organizations assigned to the installation. So it's in total 16,900, give or take, plus minus personnel and families.
You guys have a whole city down there.
It's when you see it, it doesn't look like all that big, but when you put the number to it, you quickly realize what the base can support.
Looks like a resort too. You guys have a golf course, a marina. Life looks pretty good at MacDill. You said how a lot of service members really want to come to MacDill.
Oh, yeah. And that was something I definitely wanted to mention. So, being in the Air Force for, now 18 years, I had applied for positions down here, back to back to back. Whenever I knew I was up for an assignment, I was like, oh, let me see if I can get one of these jobs at MacDill, right? Because it's one of the places that everybody wants to go. Tampa is amazing. Everybody wants to move to Florida. Finally, after a lot of trials and errors, really, I was able to get an assignment here. So right around 16-ish years. So it worked out perfectly for me.
And do a lot of other people in the Air Force have that same mindset, right? I mean, what's kind of the vibe out there with MacDill? Are people is everyone putting that on their package?
Oh, yeah. I would say that MacDill is definitely one of the most sought after bases to be stationed at. Honestly, I would say it is in the top. It was number one.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
that's cool.
They're always, over their manning threshold in most cases.
Probably, I mean, geographically, it's great. You're in Florida, right? The beach is right there. Tampa's a cool city, but also there's so many cool jobs. I mean, you mentioned 16,000 people live/work there, families included, all that. But the different things you guys are working on are really, really interesting, and probably a lot further. There's just more variety there than maybe some base out somewhere that only focuses on like ordnance or whatever that may be.
Yeah,
the variety is amazing.
And that's exactly right. So, you obviously have the installation, which is an air refueling wing. So, combat air refueling is the main mission for the air refueling wing. But then, like I mentioned before, you could easily be working at the 6th Air Refueling Wing one day, and then you can get picked up for an assignment just across the street over at, the Special Operations Command or over at the Central Command. There's a lot of opportunities there. And, as a military member, it's awesome, to not just to work on the base itself, but to be a part of the joint community, because that's really what the Air Force is focusing a lot on.
And how long do service members stay? I mean, is it a short cycle there? Are those 16,000 people kind of always churning and moving, or do people typically get to stay a long time?
So some military members do get to, we call it homesteading. That's when you stay at an installation for, longer than, 3 to 4 years. But what's unique about MacDill, I would say, is the fact that, it is a very highly populated EFMP base, which is Exceptional Family Member Program. So because of the infrastructure supporting the installation, so, you have the Moffett, you have
Right.
Tampa General, you have all these the infrastructure to support families in need. So a lot of people end up here for long term if their family's going through something like that.
Yeah, I bought a house over the summer, kind of south of Gandy in the area, and the family that sold it to me, he was a Green Beret,
Okay.
and he kind of closed out his career at
Yeah.
MacDill, and he was just telling me how much they love Tampa, and they really built a home here, and his wife obviously got to know all the neighbors, and they just, I don't know, when we met them to buy their home, they were just very warm about Tampa and the area around MacDill and working at the base. It was he kind of had a smile on his face when he was talking about it. So
Yeah, I mean the base and the Tampa Bay community is very inclusive to the military population, which is really nice because that's not always the case wherever you get stationed, right? Here, people see, if I go to the Publix on Gandy,
yeah,
and I go in, people tell me, thank you for your service, oh, or they tell me a story like, oh, I used to serve or my family served, and it's really nice, and that is a very welcoming like feeling for military folks, especially when that isn't always the vibe of the community.
it's kind of interesting too because there's a good mix, right? I mean, I'm sure you can get stationed in some places where you're only around service members, like that's it, and you don't really see members of the public. And for you to leave those gates and be in a city like Tampa immediately, that must be a cool thing. You go to the grocery store, you're in the mix. It's probably a nice break.
Yeah, it's really nice because you do, do have, your military, comfort, but then you also get to, interact with the community.
Yeah,
And what's also unique is I've noticed, there are a lot of transplants to Tampa. And,
for sure.
there's the natives, of
Yeah,
course, like yourself. But there's a lot of people who just really like what Tampa has to offer, and they end up moving
tons.
down here.
Yeah,
I was looking online and I saw that the veteran population for Hillsborough County is a little over 90,000,
that's
which sounds like a lot, right? But
yeah.
then I was like, okay, well, what's Hillsborough? 1.5 million people, and that's like 6%. And I was like, okay, well, the military, is 1% of the nation, and then so I was like, actually, 6% is pretty good.
That's a lot of
Yeah,
people.
absolutely.
90,000
Yeah.
veterans live in Hillsborough County.
And that's
Yeah, it's
just
amazing.
veterans themselves. That doesn't necessarily include, active duty service members or
Right.
DoD civilians, which is another huge footprint that we have at MacDill and
Well,
SOCOM.
I'm sure we can talk about it a little later. But the private sector, right? The jobs that MacDill creates outside of those gates is probably massive. Defense contractors or, you know, different companies that make gear for you guys, I'm sure, visits Tampa, comes to MacDill, meets with those commanders. Is that done at MacDill too? Like private companies working with the military? That's probably a huge thing here. I see billboards on Del Mabry about different defense contractors. You guys have Soft Week, which is basically like the Comic-Con of special operations,
Yeah.
right? Where like you have everyone congregate from around the world to talk about special operations,
Oh,
different
yeah.
technologies. Like it seems like Tampa's the new defense hub of the South.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to agree with you on that. It does seem like there are a lot more defense contract companies starting up here in the local area, right? And that could just be, because this is a very, I would say a lucrative area since you have the SOCOM headquarters here, you have CENTCOM,
Right.
headquarters here, you have a large veteran population. There's a lot of different reasons, and as you know, Tampa Bay is constantly growing. By the day, I think it was like hundreds of people are moving to Tampa every single day, and so I think in and of itself, that coupled with the other industry partners that are starting corporate offices here, I think there are like this is a place that you want to be, and if you
hmm
could be here at the startup, why not?
I would imagine the military would love that, right? It seems like just from our conversation before we went live, special operations is so there's this there's this relationship and collaborative effort that extends so much further than those guys that kick down the doors,
Oh yeah.
right? It's like the logistical support, the planning and preparation, and then the private sector providing the different types of gear and weaponry and technologies. It's like this is a huge, it's almost like a Silicon Valley type thing that not a lot of people, at least not a lot of people think of it in that way, but it kind of is, right? To have that headquarters here, it's like this exchange of ideas and information, and on base and off base. Can you pull up an article, David? I think the Business Journal, we just wrote about it. A defense contractor, just type in like innovation hub gas works, because this to me is like huge news. And I think economically from the city, right, if we can get more of these defense contractors to come here, share ideas, create products, work with you guys, sounds like a win-win.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. So one of the main things, when you look through Soft Week, some of the things that they're showcasing there, it's their adaptations of devices that are geared towards, what the operators might need, on the ground, in the air, and things of that nature. So it's very interesting. And I'm not sure if you got a chance to see all the expo when Soft Week was here, but there's a lot of cool swag out
It's hard
there.
to miss.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you looked
You
at
guys
the
are pretty
expos.
loud out there on the waterfront. So
You
yeah,
know.
look at this. Collaborative works to bring Tampa Bay's first secure facility for classified defense meetings to Ybor City. Like, how interesting is that? So this is a 54,000 square foot facility in Ybor City's Gasworks district, designed to host secure classified meetings for government and defense contractors. 54,000 square feet is that's a lot of space for all that innovation. Here's a quote. "We're filling a critical gap by giving government, industry, and academic organizations supporting our national security and defense communities the access and capabilities they need right here in Tampa Bay." How amazing is that? I think, and they're partnering with Daryl Shaw with this new Gasworks development. Are you familiar with Gasworks?
No.
So it's a very large development right in between Ybor City and kind of the Channel Side downtown area. It's about, I think, 50 to 80, somewhere in there, acres.
I see.
Huge area. And a part of that is this innovation hub
I see.
for
Is it
defense
down?
contracting.
Is it down by like Softworks?
Softworks. Where's that?
That's downtown in Ybor City too.
Is it?
Yeah.
Type that in, David. Why am I not familiar? Softworks. Maybe I'll recognize it when he pulls it up here. But it's
SOF, like Special Operations Forces, Softworks. Yep, there it is. East,
2nd Avenue.
maybe not the same area.
Okay, see, I didn't know about this. How cool. Now, this is probably what, like a veteran-owned company? Someone's gotten out and created this organization to...
So we actually have a lot of our folks working out of this facility too, and it's just it's how would you kind of describe it? It's more of like a
co-work space for the military?
if you click on the website.
Yeah, click that website, David.
But yeah, we actually do a lot of
Wow, look at
sessions
this.
downtown with industry partners at this facility.
So scroll up, David. This is interesting. Softworks serves as an innovation platform for the United States Special Operations Command as a nonprofit by bringing the best of government, industry, academia, and national labs together to help solve challenging problems encountered by special operations forces. Wow.
Very unique space. If you get the opportunity to go and just kind of explore it, it's awesome.
How cool is that? So you actually have, so people will go in there just like it says, to share ideas,
Absolutely.
collaborate, etc.
That's exactly right. Yeah, we in my previous position, we used to set up meetings down there with our boss, for our boss and industry partners. So then he wouldn't have to come on the installation, right? It's a good place to kind of, mind meld ideas, present information. And like I said, they're doing a lot of really, really, really unique things there.
How interesting is that? And then with this new building, this huge
Oh, yeah.
new building, will probably add to it. That's what I'm saying. It's kind of painting this picture as like Tampa is going to become, and already kind of is,
Oh yeah, absolutely.
this hub for defense innovation. I think that's great for the city. That's awesome. How cool is that? Supported by the base. I wanted to talk about your career though, and kind
Okay.
of how you got to MacDill. You mentioned that it was on your list for a long
Yeah,
time. You
absolutely.
finally got it. You moved a few years ago, you said.
Yeah, I got here a little under 3 years ago, and it was something I'd been hoping and dreaming for my whole career, right?
Yeah.
They have what's called a dream sheet, and you fill it out and you put all the bases that you want to be stationed at, hopefully you get one, right? But normally you'll get like third, fourth, fifth, sixth on the list. MacDill was number one for quite a while. So we had a talent marketplace tool that we would use, and I applied for a job at the Special Operations Command, and I got selected. So it was
Fantastic.
amazing.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah,
That's
thank
awesome. I
you.
hope you've been enjoying it. Seems
Yeah.
like you are.
Oh yeah, it's really unique. And like I said, as an airman, you see things from the Air Force perspective. In
Yeah.
some cases, you have depending on what you've been exposed to, and whether that's through deployments or just your career experiences, you have this idea of what it's like to work with the special operations community. But having worked there now for 3 years, I've really learned a lot, and I have a deeper understanding and passion really for what they do each and every day. As a non-soft career field,
Yeah.
my direct role is really supporting the warfighter. I do a lot of project management, administrative support for the leadership team, which is very, very rewarding, right? It's not every day that you get to have a conversation with a 4-star commander, or a 2-star chief of staff. So just hearing their perspectives on really what the military is all about, and getting that strategic level of experience, being told to you, it's very, very rewarding.
And to be a part of basically what you see on CNN. I mean, these newsworthy, incredible, heroic stories you read of some of the operations in the Middle East and all around the world. I bet to be a part of that is just super, super cool at a
Yeah,
base level.
it's very interesting to just the information that you're privy to, and then kind of seeing how things play out, and
Yeah,
the media's
right.
depiction of it for
Yeah,
sure.
that's probably interesting to watch for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
So, can we talk about organization? Because I was a little confused on this, and I think people in Tampa don't quite understand what roles are exactly at MacDill. We mentioned a couple of headquartered commands, but you specifically, you're in the Air Force.
Correct.
Your headquarters is Special Operations Command
I work, yeah, at the headquarters Special Operations
at the
Command.
headquarters, but it's not just Air Force. So we talked a
Correct.
little bit before we went live about the kind of that structure. It's
Yeah,
it's very wide.
that's exactly right. So across the headquarters Special Operations Command, there's around somewhere between 5,000 and 6,000 total force personnel, and that includes representation from all the services. In addition to the service members that we have assigned, we also have DoD civilians, and then we have a large contractor footprint. And so that's what I think what makes SOCOM really, really unique is it is really a total force team.
Mm,
You have people who are operators that work at the headquarters. You have people who are enablers. Then you also have support functions. So the environment there is really unique. And you're I think to myself, like, I'm coming into this environment. It's very intimidating, right? I'm going to be with these working with and amongst people who are war fighters, more or
right.
less. But the way that I was embraced when I joined this community was very surprising, if I'm being honest with you. They were very, okay, Senior Gonzales, you're part of the team. They would bring me in. It was
Mm,
never like, Senior Gonzales, you're not an operator. If you're
right.
assigned to SOCOM, you are soft. And that's something that the commander is very adamant about. He always talks about his 3 priorities, which is people, which people are more important than hardware, or humans are more important than hardware is the exact vernacular. But to him, that's what he focuses a lot of his energy into. And for me, that's something that matters a lot to me. And one thing I really appreciated was the fact that, like I said, it wasn't like, oh, you're an airman and you're not soft, so we're going to put you over here. No, they brought me in. I got to go to all the different types of meetings that take place and really get a deeper perspective, which is critical, if you think about an airman's perspective. So part of our developmental process is, they want us to, understand all that is the Air Force. But then, when you get these opportunities to learn about the joint environment, you really need to absorb that like a sponge so that you can then go back and teach the Air Force about joint.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's very unique.
And that's unique to MacDill, right?
That's exactly
and
right.
SOCOM, because if you were at a base, which I'm sure in your 18 years you've been stationed with maybe only service members in the Air Force.
That's correct.
So there's essentially no collaboration between those two branches or between the Air Force and other branches. I shouldn't say no,
Yeah,
but at least
I know what you mean, though.
you were working in.
Yeah, I was very focused on the Air Force mission, right?
Right.
And you understand the Air Force mission supports the larger, Department of Defense and whatnot. But, having to work day in and day out, my team, we are a joint team. I have civilians, I have, 2 Navy sailors, and, I have an Air Force person.
How cool is that? That's awesome.
It's interesting.
So you going into that, right? That organization with that, someone who's probably been in the Army for 15 years, like essentially your equivalent in a different branch is working with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
On the same goal. I bet that must be super cool because, they air quote grew up in a different branch, different policies, different vernacular, just different, and to come together. How interesting is that? I bet that's a part of your job that must be really cool.
Yeah, it really is. It's like all the puzzle pieces, you understand, and then everything kind of coming together.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that it's an invaluable experience for sure.
Is there anything that, obviously we just talked about some of those positives, not to bring up negatives, but is there anything that's challenging with that, working with these different branches and different ideas?
I think initially it's I wouldn't quite say it's a challenge, but it's different,
Right.
because every service has their ism, right? And understanding this individual's mannerisms, or this individual's their culture. It's culture based, right? This is the culture of this service. This is the culture of this service, and bringing everyone together and really understanding like how everyone is kind of built differently based on the service that they're a part of.
Is there a playful competition a little bit there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love all the services, but I'm always representing the Air Force.
You guys have some cool gadgets, I will say. Living down there and seeing those planes fly over, it's like, oh my God, that thing's insane.
Yeah,
Some of those
absolutely.
tankers are wild.
Oh yeah,
It's crazy they can even get off the ground,
yeah. Especially when they have a full load.
especially when they have a full load. I saw one the other day. It wasn't a tanker, or at least I don't think it was, because it didn't have the thing on the back with the wings
I see.
that comes out. It was just this huge, like beluga whale looking airplane, massive, super fat.
Interesting.
Fat wings. It was like as big as one of the tankers, but I don't think it was a tanker because it didn't have that little thing on the back. Maybe it was. Any idea what that would be?
I honestly don't know, but it really could be any of the, like a C5 or something to
Yeah,
that effect. I don't.
large cargo plane or
Yeah,
something
and that's
like that.
exactly right. So, there's constant flow of traffic, at the base proper, and on the airfield specifically, and they can get, they can come here for many, many reasons. So you probably have seen, a lot of aircraft, that aren't necessarily homed.
A-10.
Oh yeah.
Coast Guard helicopters, Coast Guard C-130s coming in, fighter jets. I mean, yeah, everything, right? Now, is there like a fighter squadron there? Why would there be fighter jets at MacDill? Do they train?
Yeah, so sometimes the air base, they'll do like exercises and things like that, and then other aircraft from other installations will kind of come here and just to exercise their capabilities. And
Interesting.
everybody wants to come to Tampa, so
Right, why not? We got boat parades, and we have Soft Week, which is developed into this like whole week long, essentially season of special operations. And there's this huge demonstration downtown Tampa. Let's talk about that. So this was a few months ago.
yeah.
David, can you look up Soft Week Tampa 2024? Pull up some videos, because it's this, like, if you're listening and you haven't been to it yet, you have to go next year. It is the coolest, super unique. I don't know of any other place in the country that has that large of a demonstration in a city, like in a downtown,
Yeah.
right on the waterfront. Like they capture the mayor. These guys come in on helicopters, drop down onto the Starship yacht, rescue the mayor. Like it's this entire exhibition of a portion of our capability, I would assume.
And that's exactly right. They are in that demonstration showcasing the capability of the Special Operations Forces. So it's really, we have everyone out there, doing what their job is, really.
Look at this. These guys are riding the trolley coming in.
And this year it was unique too because it was an international soft week. So some of the larger scale demonstrations occur during international soft week, which I don't know when our next one is. Is it every 2 years?
Oh, is it every 2 years?
The international one this year.
Oh, okay.
But it won't have the Cape demo.
Okay, I see.
Got it. But this is, again, this ties. Oh, we were talking to him about, yeah, he was the first guy that was going to come on.
Colonel Pena?
I think, yeah, Colonel Pena, yeah. He was a great guy, super
Yeah,
nice
he's
guy.
awesome.
He was cool. No, but if you haven't seen this, you must check it out. It's just fantastic. And I think it ties into what we talked about earlier with that innovation hub. More eyes on Tampa, all these people coming together, right? This must be great for new ideas because I think like as technology advances and as scenarios change, 100 years ago, no one thought about commandeering an airplane and running it into a tower because 100 years ago, there really weren't commercial airlines like there are today. So I would imagine there's never a static moment where special operations feels like, okay, we're good. Like we're good. Like this is the limit of our capability. It just seems like you're always having to test new ideas. And well, what about this scenario? And well, what happens if, this country had an issue with this? And it's like, how big is this type of stuff, this demonstration type stuff, and these different scenarios? Like, can you really plan for everything?
I think to a certain extent you can, right? Or you can train to be prepared to respond to anything, or be prepared, to kind of just be ready to do what you need to do if the time or the incident occurs. So I did. So one of General Fenton's priorities is transform, and I just wanted to read to you specifically what that entails. SOCOM will trailblaze and lead the DoD and nation. It will meet challenges by optimizing, modernizing, and innovating, inventing, transforming our people, organizations, and technology. So Soft Week really feeds into that. We're not just like, okay, we're good.
Mm-hmm.
We are always looking to be, bigger, faster, stronger, more agile. Those are things that are a constant thought for the command. And really, we are very proactive in trying to make sure that we do have the best capabilities, not just to, for the organization itself, but for the global impact
for the planet.
Yeah,
right?
That's exactly right.
That's what's so fascinating to me is like special operations in this vacuum. If we're only worried about this country, that doesn't really exist. Like the conversation is so much more broad than that. It's such a global conversation. It's such a global thing. I think the defense of our nation is probably one thing you look at, but also worldwide, like partnering with different countries and their international issues, right? Our country has its own problems, but evaluating the South China Sea and those different politics and international relations is probably very important to you because you need to understand, what happens if this occurs? What happens if China decides to do this? It's like you guys are so entrenched in almost economic policies, it seems. Am I right on that? Like you guys probably have to look at so much more than just kicking down doors and taking out bad guys.
Yeah,
right?
and that's exactly it. We focus a lot on, as we talked about relationships, civil affairs, humanitarian support, really helping the other nations have the capabilities that they need so that they can not just defend themselves, but, be reliable allies to us and, the other countries that they're, supporting to really try to combat the bad guys.
Gasparilla's coming up. Have you been to Gasparilla yet?
So I have been to like the parade piece,
Yeah.
but this year I actually signed up to do one of the running challenges.
Oh,
so
cool.
I'm super excited. Yeah.
Are you doing it's the Gasparilla Publix 15K?
So I'm going to do I think it's called the Michelob Ultra Inferno Challenge. And it's,
Pull that up, David, because what's happening with Gasparilla is it's becoming this really interesting
Oh, yeah.
seasonal, like 3-month thing.
oh yeah.
And I was wondering if the base has any, events or being a part of that season with the city.
Yeah, so I don't think we actually have I would say a playing part in it, but I know we do go down there. We the city is gracious
I'm sure
enough.
y'all do. Yeah.
The city is gracious enough to give us some seats, so we have we can kind of watch the parade and not have to stand and things like that. So it's awesome.
Do y'all have any float of some sort? Are you actually a part of the parade? Maybe you do.
No, but look,
What the heck?
you got me thinking. How do we make this happen?
Oh my gosh, I think it would totally glue you guys and the community together in one event. That's just
yeah.
a total celebration of like Tampa history and culture. I'm imagining the float could be like a mini version of one of your tankers,
Okay.
or like something like that. I think would be really
I thought you were
interesting.
going to say a mini demo, like from Soft Week
Oh my
on
gosh.
the float.
Well, there's already cannons going off. I mean, I don't think you'd cause any disturbance.
Yeah.
It's, it's already pretty a loud day. So it's, what is it? What's the date? 2025, David? It said on that other page, Saturday, January 27th. Oh, that was this year. That's this year. Go back. January 25th, 2025.
Okay.
Yeah. Man, you guys need a float. What are we doing? Let's get you a float. That'd be awesome. Yeah, I would imagine service member stationed at MacDill love Gasparilla. It's such a fun, kind of aggressively unique part of Tampa culture. I mean, there's like pirates running around drinking rum and very, very like maybe old school military in a sense. And by old school, I mean like hundreds of years ago.
Okay, I was like
pirates and stuff. You know what I mean? We got to get you guys a float. I think that'd be really interesting. Invasion route. Yeah. Do you know the history of Gasparilla?
I don't know it too intimately.
So basically, there's an invasion. These pirates are in this ship, which is parked right out here on Bayshore, and they come into the city, and they land downtown, and they demand the key to the city from the mayor, and they capture the mayor, and they do it every year. I think the first Gasparilla was in the very early 1900s, like 1906 or something like that. That's an old picture. Is that an old picture on the top left? It doesn't look crazy old. But yeah, it's been going on for a long, long, long time. And the numbers now are wild, like 300,000 or 400,000 people congregate to Tampa and become a part of it. Yeah, that photo's from 1947.
Wow.
Fun stuff.
Yeah, I mean it's a great time, and I see more and more people. The streets seem more crowded every year, so it'll be interesting to see what the walking, if you can call it even walking, it's just kind of like barely moving downtown actually looks like.
So logistics on and off the base for something like that. There must be a conversation with maybe Tampa PD, like, because you can't go down Bayshore.
Yeah, we basically closed that gate.
The Bayshore gate? Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Have everyone go to Dale Mabry or whatever it would be.
Yeah.
I forgot. Who did we have on, David, that was talking about during a hurricane, the city and the county work with the base to remove some equipment and host the equipment in different locations? I think maybe it was Raymond James. Was that Riley Tuff? Who's at the Emergency Operations Center at the city of Tampa?
Yeah, and they probably worked with the installation, so the wing specifically, since the wing owns that function.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, MacDill Air Force Base is low. I mean, it's not like you guys are high up. How did you fare during the hurricane down there?
So I think there were some wind damages and whatnot, but it could have been a whole lot worse.
Oh, yeah.
And I think really this did open my personal perspective on how
Right.
how this area can be impacted by such, strong storms. So
I would imagine it was a little bit of a wake-up call. I
absolutely.
don't think anyone in the city, MacDill, I mean, we've never as a community dealt with a warning sign like that before. And we did have a lot of destruction, but nothing, what was predicted was so much worse than what actually ended up happening.
Yeah, I think that like it was an opportunity for us, to reflect on, okay, what does preparedness really look like?
Yeah.
Because we can be hit, by a storm head on. And, while the storm might have deviated some, the
Right.
winds were pretty substantial in many areas, not just in Tampa, but, the surrounding cities as well. And up where I live in Temple Terrace, there's so many oak trees.
Right.
And there were trees downed. And there was, believe it or not, there was a video that I saw, and it was, Olive Fowler, underwater. And I was just surprised because I thought, Temple Terrace, Tampa, up north is safe. And I was surprised by how much water we actually got up there and
We
wind damage.
we had a historic rainfall they hadn't seen in hundreds of years. And because the bay was all backed up and all the rivers and streams were backed up, areas that are not even in flood zones like
Yeah.
Fowler flooded.
Yeah.
Such a wake-up call for our community.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if those predictions were correct. If the base was under 15 feet of water, how would you guys continue to work,
Yeah. So, in those types of situations, we have, it really depends on what your job is.
Yeah.
And, we have some of our organizations do flyaways and, to make sure that the mission continues
Right.
from a different location. And so, I think one thing we've learned, if not many things from the pandemic is, really how to maximize our capabilities while not being in the office. So
Right.
I think, from a mission execution standpoint, we'd still be able to do most of our core functions. Our work centers might look different, but, we'd be able to, we'd make it work.
You're working on important stuff. I would
Yeah.
imagine you don't want to just say, "Oh, there's a storm coming.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
take 2 weeks off."
We have a lot of our capabilities, we can do that from home based on, we have different computer systems that we can take.
Right. That makes sense. Well, yeah, and I would imagine. So you came probably right after the pandemic, 2021 to MacDill? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine that was a learning experience for everyone. I mean, I know in the business world it was certainly a learning experience. I bet the same thing for you guys.
Yeah, it was. And, moving here post-pandemic was an eye-opening. We had our eye on Tampa for, as I said, for,
Yeah.
years. And, we always saw it as this hidden gem. And, it was always very affordable. The quality of life was always, at the top. And then, post-pandemic, you really saw, people, the world, the
Yeah.
whole United States really started to see the beauty that is Tampa Bay. And everybody started moving here. And
That's
so
true.
I was like, no. I told my husband we should have bought a house earlier.
Oh,
We bought one
no.
anyway, but
What year did you buy? 21?
yeah,
Okay, you probably did okay.
yeah, we did well. But I think I was always like looking back, and I was like, man, if only we would have bought 3 years ago. But
Oh, I
it
know.
could have been a whole lot worse. So, and
Uh,
we were fortunate. We sold off another property, so we were fine.
Oh, good, good. Those memes are so funny when it'll be like, yeah, when I was in elementary school, what the hell was I doing reading books? I should have been buying real estate.
Yeah.
It's like that's a challenging thing too. I wanted to ask you about that, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's true, right? Tampa has become this prominent city,
Oh yeah,
and real estate prices have risen so drastically. When I bought that house from the military family, they paid like 600,000 for that house, and which was, that's a lot of money.
yeah.
And our service members don't make a crazy amount of money to afford even that, of course. How does that line up in the future? Housing costs are so expensive. Boy, how do we house our service members who are looking to come to Tampa? That's probably a tough thing to do.
Yeah, and honestly, that conversation is something that our senior leaders are having, up on the hill, just
Yeah.
really trying to make sure that, that we do get the housing allowance that is suitable for what the prices are in this area. So in general, the military, we get, what's called a basic allowance for housing, and that's based on, several different factors, your rank, your dependents. But what we've realized, especially post-pandemic, was how expensive it is, and, different, if you have more years in service or you're mill to mill, you do get a little bit more money. But, I think about, the single airman that doesn't, that's not living on base because they, the base lodging is full, or the dorms more or less, and they have to get a house downtown. What does that look like when, the rent prices are where they are? So our leadership is very, cognizant of that, and working, I would say, daily, around the clock to try to make sure that,
Yeah.
that there is a good representation so that our folks are in the right housing. Because, you give us a base rate, but that base rate may not necessarily be living conditions that we want our folks living in.
And you certainly don't want people to have to live an hour away from the base.
And that's another interesting topic, really. What's really unique about MacDill is exactly that. You have people, further south than Bradenton. You have, folks north of Spring Hill. You have people that live in Lakeland. And one of my coworkers, she lives all the way in Orlando.
Oh, I feel
And
bad for
that
her.
commute
Oh my
every day
gosh.
is tough.
Ooh.
So
I met
but
a
we
guy
make it
who lives
work.
in Brandon he said, "Oh, I was in the military for a while. Now I'm a defense contractor. I work at MacDill." I said, "Wow, you drive out there every day?" He said, 3 to 5 days a week. I'm out there. He's like, "I got to leave at 3:30 in the morning to make it, at an adequate time." And I was just thinking, gosh, that's tough. That really is tough. But it's also not just the problem of the military. I'm dealing with
Oh
it.
yeah, absolutely.
I think everyone in this community is dealing with this incredible appreciation of prices,
Yeah.
which is tough. It's on one hand, there's all of these negative aspects of that, but on the other hand, we're a part of really something cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that a lot of people want to move here, and how blessed are we already live here.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So it's kind of like this double-edged sword where, yes, it's an issue, but it's not just the base. It's not just the military. It's like, I think our whole region,
Yeah.
really the whole country is dealing with these price escalations. I'm sure that's a huge conversation right now in the military, is housing all of these service members in an adequate way without forcing them to live in Orlando. I mean,
That's
you
exactly
certainly
right.
wouldn't want that.
Yeah, and the traffic here is brutal in general. So it'd be interesting to see how the infrastructure changes to support the growth of the community.
Yeah.
I would say. I sometimes I normally take the Selman to get home, but every once in a while I'll take a trip up 275, and I do see that they are making progress there. So it is nice to see that more lanes are being added, and I'm anxious to see really what that looks like from a commuting standpoint, because when I moved here it was about 45 minutes to get to base, and now it's about an hour 10-ish, and that's just 22 miles.
Sunday morning, it's like 15 minutes.
Yeah,
No.
I'm good. I just got to get on that off schedule.
Well, unfortunately, increasing the lanes, I think, will alleviate pressure temporarily.
Yeah.
But in the long run, it's not going to solve the traffic issue. Something interesting that was proposed was actually a ferry from the
Oh.
Apollo Beach area, kind of to the base
Yeah.
south of Ballast Point.
I was reading that, and I was curious to see really what was going to come from that, because it looked, it definitely looked desirable.
You've got these politics involved, you've got, the county wants one thing and the city says this. And then I don't know if the base was in that conversation as well, but
I'm sure.
I think it would be fantastic. Can you imagine people that live, you might not know the exact number, but if I was to ask the question, how many service members live in that Apollo Beach, Brandon, Riverview, Hillsborough County area? There's probably a lot of people.
Yeah, I would probably, if I was to guess, and this is
Hundreds,
just,
right?
I would say 50%.
Wow, 50%.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is me just, giving
Yeah,
you the old wag.
Just a guess, right? But call it thousands
yeah,
of people.
Exactly.
So can you imagine how cool it would be? You could drive your car to Apollo Beach, park it, get on a ferry, 25 minutes across the bay. Boom, they put you off right there at the base. Go to work, hop on, come back. And you skip downtown,
Yeah.
you skip Bayshore. I bet a lot of people would use it.
I mean, I would consider it, and I don't even live down there. So just
you drive all the way around
yeah,
just
to get that little waterway in the morning.
Nice little
very
view.
peaceful.
I'm telling you, it could be a real solution. I think that creativity moving forward is the answer to some of these problems with housing costs and traffic issues. I just think we don't live in the world we used to. I think when I was born, we've looked it up before, and I'm not that old. I'm only 32, but in 92, there was like, I don't know, 8 or 10 million people living in Florida. Now there's 24 million people
Wow.
living here. So, and 4 million in our region in Tampa
Yeah.
Bay alone, 1,000,005, like you said, in
Yeah.
Hillsborough County. There's just a lot of people. And moving all those goods and services and people around is a tough thing to do. And I
Yeah.
think the only way out is to be creative.
That's exactly right.
Same thing with what you guys do, right?
Yeah.
Creativity.
Yeah. And that's exactly the way it is. You think about how, the operational environment changes, right? And you have to have that flexibility and you have to be, innovative in how you get things done because, you don't always get, more resources. And by resources, I mean all resources, time, money, manpower, equipment, so you have to be innovative.
Yeah. Yeah. When obviously the global war on terror was 20 years, it's kind of still going on, I guess. There's still a lot happening in the Middle East. But moving forward, I wanted to ask you about the role of special operations and the prominence of it, right? Traditionally, just as a citizen, right? As someone who's not in the military and has never been in the military, you think of these like Vietnam dudes with their bandoliers, and running around and doing all these interesting things. Now there's this really deep capability. We talked about all the relationships with these different nations. We talked about the creativity, the capability to operate in the Arctic to the desert to the jungle, like literally anywhere in the world. What's the role of special operations moving forward now that we're out of the global war on terror and looking into the future? Like, do you think it plays more of a role, less of like, how has that shifted?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to, as we shift our focus from, counterterrorism into you know, the other functions of the soft community, you'll see that, while we may not be doing, this thing that's, kicking down doors and
Right.
this, we have a presence around the world, right? We're building those relationships because let's face it, the world, we still have our near peer threats. We still have, Russia and China and other areas that are just, waiting for the opportunity to, I hate to say, you know, have their way with the United States. So
Well,
we are, we are adapting and we have the ability and agility to kind of continue to meet the nation's needs, as special operations forces, really.
yeah, that's, I think, just following the news internationally, the stuff in like Taiwan and China, Russia, Ukraine, and then the stuff in the Middle East now with Syria, and with Israel and Gaza and Lebanon. It's like, you know, just as someone who does business here, that, it's not my job to really pay attention to any of that. But seeing that, you look at that and you go, oh, it's kind of a daunting fact, all this stuff happening. Is that a big focus of the American military as a whole and of special operations? Is that preparedness? I mean, it seems like something's bubbling up that might not be good.
Yeah, I think we always spend a lot of time focusing on the prevention piece, right? Our
Right.
our goal is always to prevent a conflict. And so I think if we continue to kind of focus our energy on that,
Yeah.
then hopefully we won't ever have to be in those situations. Realistically speaking, it could happen, right? But I think as long as we focus a lot on that prevention phase of really, all that is, the profession of the military and and the armed forces. I think that kind of is where we try to make our difference.
Right.
And then obviously, if that fails, we are prepared as a nation and as a service to do what we need to do to protect
Right.
our interests.
We don't want it, but if it happens, we're ready.
Yeah, that's exactly
Type
right.
thing. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. There's so much to keep track of, and it's so many different places around the world. I would imagine your leadership has a lot to keep track of. I mean, the relationships you're building with these different countries like Japan is probably so much different of a conversation than it is in Ukraine, so much different than in the Middle East. Culturally, the language is different. The history of those conflicts are different. I mean, some of these conflicts have been going on before America existed. So how does our country get into that conversation effectively, even though our seat at the table is relatively new?
Yeah, I think it just really depends on the country, right? Like, as I've said before, we have these pre-existing relationships in these countries, right? So, we have already established trust, and
Right.
even if there is, any type of unresolved conflict, I think as long as we're all focused on the same end goal, right? I think we're able to kind of make it work.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's encouraging to hear that all that's being looked at, because I think if that last war in the Middle East taught us anything, is that sometimes it's not best to just have brute force at the forefront. It seems like relationship building is such a key piece of preventing something like that happening initially. So the fact that that's the focus, I think, is great. I think that that's amazing. I don't think we have to have these conflicts all over the earth if we can all figure out a way to get along. But I also believe that America should be that example. I think the United States has the capability economically, but also our military has the capability with these different relationships that we've built over the last, God, since World War II. Look at the relationship we have with Korea, Japan, and these nations in the Middle East. It's like I was talking earlier about kind of my shift from Ron Paul, his policy to where I'm at today, but I really do see the true value in being everywhere and kind of being that example for the world. Is that in the focus anymore? I remember growing up, like with George Bush, it was always America's like the world's protector, and there was a little bit of that rhetoric going on. Is that still a focus? Like, does our military still see kind of the world's safety as its responsibility?
So I think that's a very complex question, but I would think that if it impacts the United States and it impacts our allies, then it impacts us. And
Right.
so I think in that sense, yes,
Right.
absolutely.
Right. Because, well, the answer to that could be anything. I mean, anything could impact us,
Oh yeah,
right? If there's instability in a certain country, even if that's not our ally, that could certainly affect us. So that's why we have to be everywhere, right?
yeah. That's it. I hate to always go back to that, but I think that's it. It's really one of the fundamental things that we focus a lot of our time on is having the relationships, having mutual respect and trust with our allies and partners, and then that helps us to really get that strategic advantage because we can get information sooner. They trust us as a valuable asset to their team, and ultimately, that's kind of where we want to be in the world, right? You want to be somewhere where you can get the information, as quickly as and most accurately as possible, so that you can really, be where you need to be when, you know, things pop off.
Shit goes down.
Yeah, I mean,
You
you
know?
said it.
Yeah, I said it. I said it.
Trying to watch
I
my
I
language
saw
here.
I saw you have an airborne tab. Can you tell me about some of the cool stuff in your career you've gotten to do, and maybe some stuff you're looking forward to?
Yeah, so for these in particular, so you get the airborne once you're assigned to one of the special operations commands. So I'm not necessarily airborne myself,
Okay.
but it's interesting that you bring that up because last week I was talking to our personnel department, and one of my Air Force specialty codes, there's like a J prefix, and so they asked me, they said, "Hey, do you want to get jump certified?" So I think that is,
Wow.
that's unique, especially as an administrator. So that's my career field, administration. So that really encompasses a lot of human resource type functions,
Mm.
administrative support to senior leaders. And as you continue to promote in the military, you become more of like a manager of, larger teams. So that was one thing I was like, oh, well, I'm about to get jump certified.
So you said yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh my
So
gosh.
You might be seeing me jump. I don't know where we do the training, but I'll let you know so you can video
So
it.
what does that look like though? Do you have to go off to like Georgia to go do that, or do you do it right here in Tampa?
No, it's interesting that you bring that up too. So like I said, we just, I just had discussed it with our personnel team. So I'm still waiting to see what that all entails. And then I'll make my final decision, I'm not 20 years old anymore, but
I feel you.
I think to myself, with the senior leaders that I work with, I'm like, you know what? They would, I'm sure they would love to see me, involved in some of the stuff that they have done throughout their careers.
Exactly. And wouldn't it kind of make you appreciate your mission more if you
Oh,
were kind of
yeah.
a part of that, wow, like these guys do this every day type thing,
Yeah, and that's exactly right too. It's like, and I always think of it like this too, like when will I ever have this opportunity again?
Right.
I may not. So why not just take advantage of it?
You're getting paid to do it. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool too.
exactly. And so I think that's one unique thing, obviously here. In my prior job, I worked for the Air Mobility Command Inspector General, which was really unique. We got to travel around all the air mobility wings, so MacDill Air Force Base and all the other mobility wings throughout the Air Force.
So you got to come here at your old job.
Oh yeah.
Oh, so that's where you're looking around going, all right, this place, I need to put this on the list here.
Yeah, it was interesting too because all the times I came down, I was like, okay, let me figure out where the best places to live are. You know what I mean? Like little things like that. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, what's the commute time like? But it was nice. And
Did your spouse meet you down here, and did you guys check out any areas?
Oh yeah, we definitely did.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it was nice. But that was one of a very, very rewarding position too, especially as an administrator. So normally in the Air Force as an admin, you do a lot of, like I mentioned, executive staff support. So I'm, providing, that hands-on admin actions for the in this case, I'll just use like the chief of staff as an example. But in that previous job, I actually was out in the wings inspecting their readiness capabilities. So really looking at every single wing and saying, okay, are you able to meet your O plans and your mission requirements? So I thought that was a very, very eye-opening experience.
Wow. Interesting. So just so I understand, so you're traveling the world or our nation when you're inspecting these different?
It just depends on where where we have the Air Force bases. So, or the mobility wings, so to speak. So, we went out to, I'm trying to think where, went up to Alaska, we went to Hawaii.
Cool.
We have places really everywhere. And even some of the smaller organizations, they'll have like airlift wings or airlift units attached to them. So we'd get to go out there and just really travel. And it was nice. It was a job that really got me out to see the world. But prior to that, I had really been a lot of places. So I spent several years overseas.
18 years in, you've probably gotten to do a lot of cool things in your career. And I'm assuming you plan to stick around a little longer too, right? Sounds like you're loving what you're doing. And
Yeah, I think it's a very difficult decision. I love the Air Force and I love the military. I love working at SOCOM. So whether I stay or whether I go,
we'll see.
we'll wait and see what happens. But I see myself really being a part of this community long term, and whether that means continuing to serve and then circling back and moving back to Tampa Bay.
Yeah.
I know that's my future.
Like I said, that the house I bought, that guy that sold it to me, he closed out his career and they stayed. They loved it. Do you see a lot of that here? You mentioned there's 90,000 veterans here. Do a lot of people that get stationed at MacDill that are closing out their career go, well, I'll just stay in Tampa. Why would I leave?
Yeah, and I do think a lot of people really, really not just like the area, but like the sense of community, right?
Yeah.
This is a very multicultural, inclusive community.
Totally.
It's for me personally, that was one thing that I really appreciated once I came here was just really how the community greeted me with open arms, and they really asked a lot of questions, about my military career, which, like I said, it's a give or take on whether or not that happens depending on your community. But one other thing that this community is really, really great at is connecting military members with resources.
Mm.
And what I mean by that is if decide that you want to, open your own business, our resource center will have, okay, what do you want to do? Oh, they'll be able to find someone in the community to link that individual up with. And that's just what Tampa is, from a military member's perspective. They're all about, what can we do to help you? And they think of us, in my opinion, as, you've served our country for 20 plus years. What can I do to help you?
God, that's great.
Yeah, it's
That's
amazing.
fantastic.
And
Yeah.
it's not always the case.
No, but it should be.
Absolutely.
It should be. And I think that's improving. It just seems like watching things unfold and friends that I had that have gotten in and gotten out, it seems like there is some positivity there.
Absolutely.
I think business ownership can absolutely be applied to veterans. I mean, I know so many veterans that own businesses here in Tampa, from professional service jobs all the way to landscaping pool companies. These guys are making a lot of money creating their own businesses and their own lives after they've been in for 15 or more years. It's a great thing to know that there's that support in that transition. Because if we have great people working at MacDill, why would we want them to go anywhere else?
Yeah, absolutely.
Retire and stay here in Tampa.
Yeah,
We need your bright minds,
and that's one thing I think among many really of what makes it really nice here is I think whatever path you want to go on post-military, this community has a support mechanism that will help you get to that goal.
Right.
And I think that that's something that means something, not just from a professional standpoint, but also personally. That someone who doesn't know you is going to commit to you so that you are successful in your goals.
I don't know for sure, but I would imagine the city has some sort of a program with the fire and the police and different administrative roles that are in communications with you guys. Do you know anything about that? Like if the police here have some
No,
sort of
but I know we
transition?
do have a lot of existing relationships with the local government agencies,
Yeah.
like this Tampa City Commerce.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
We have relationships with them. We have connections with everyone, and they're really all about connecting us with whatever resource we might need. Whether that's information, whether that's jobs, whether that's other types of resources. So it's interesting for sure. And like I said, I would venture to say that they are very eager to help military.
That's great. I think it's a huge part of our community. I mean, you guys are literally your own insulated city within a city with that many people working down there. Golf course, marina, restaurant. I actually, a buddy of mine took me down there golfing last year, and he showed me around there. There was an old restaurant that everyone loved on the water. Maybe you know the name of it, but there was a restaurant down there that shut
Yeah.
down after the pandemic because they had issues with staffing it. I think
Was it Seascapes?
it was on the water down
Yeah,
there, kind of a little fish
I don't remember
shack.
the exact name of it, but
But
I
he
know
was
exactly
saying
what
like,
you.
oh, it's like we lost that one to the pandemic. And I said, why don't they just fill it back up? And he's like, it's kind of complicated. They want people that are civilians working there. And then there's that whole kind of logistical thing. And he's like, it's taken a while to get it back up and running.
I see.
So hopefully that's back up now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely pleased with the on-base
Yeah, the
amenities.
facilities,
Oh
right?
yeah,
It's
it's
like-
they have everything we need, and if they don't have it, the local community will have it, and it's just right out the gate.
Is your spouse in the military too?
Yeah, he is.
And what does he do?
He's an aircraft maintainer.
Right here at MacDill.
That's correct.
So you both work at MacDill.
That's correct.
How cool is that?
Yeah, it's awesome.
Now, I would assume they try to line that up, right? They would never put you here and him like in Alaska or something like that. Or-
So they do their best to keep you with your spouse,
Right.
and if they do, have to split you guys up, they try to limit it to mileage restrictions. But it really, depends on the career field. So some career fields you just can't be stationed together.
That's tough.
Yeah, it really is. It's definitely a challenge. And then when you add other layers to it, so for me and my husband, we're both Air Force.
Did you meet in the Air Force?
We did, yes,
How cool is that?
Yeah.
And how long have you been together?
about 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
10 years. In the
Don't
Air-
ask me the exact date.
I don't want to get you in trouble.
Yeah, but it's very, it's a blessing to have both of us serving in the military for sure.
I think that's super cool. Is there anything else we missed that you wanted to outline?
No, I think
Only because this conversation is so different than the ones we've had on the show, but I felt it was important to have.
Yeah, I think we kind of covered down on everything. I think we're good.
I think
I
we're
can come
good.
back for another session.
Please do. And let's get you that Gasparilla float. We should figure out a way to make that happen.
I am going to, I'll work with the PA team and make sure that General Fenton hears your message about having a SOCOM float, and we'll see what we can do.
You guys need to be a part of that. You've got Soft Week. People love it. Everyone in my office ran down there. David and I were talking about it. I was out of town that day, but it is a huge deal. And I think the more people in this community that understand what you do, and they will support you in your efforts and like be a part of it and get excited about what y'all are doing down there. Because a little bit, part of it's secret. Obviously, a lot of it's secret, what you guys do. But the fact that you're there working on the best interests of our nation, people need to hear that story, Let's make it happen.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't co-sign too much, but I co-sign that.
I love it. All right. Well, listen, thank you again for coming on the show.
Yeah.
Thank you for your service. And it's awesome that you're a military family. Both you and your husband are in helping us out. So thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. All right. See you next week. Bye, everybody. Hey, guys, if you want to watch episodes just like this one, make sure to click right here to view the rest of our full episodes. And also make sure to subscribe by clicking right here. Thank you for watching.